Welcome to Redacted Tonight, VIP. I'm Lee Camp. Today, I talk with Trinity Tran, the co-founder and lead organizer of Public Bank Los Angeles, which I promise is a hell of a lot more exciting than it sounds. Trust me, public banking could be a financial revolution, and Trinity, like in the Matrix, has the answers. Also coming up, Redacted Tonight correspondent Natalie McGill digs into why millions of American children are being kicked off health care. But first, let's start by shredding some paper. All right, today this all comes from the Washington Post. This is a headline on the style section, all eyes on Wisconsin. Big picture about how all eyes are on Wisconsin because they're saying the election is going to come down to Wisconsin. And of course, not mentioned, the presidential election, of course, what not mentioned throughout the article is how this is an incredibly antiquated, tired, elitist electoral system. Every article about battleground states, every discussion on cable news should begin with that right there. Hey, warning, we use a ridiculous electoral system that no other country uses, that was initially set up to make sure the white male slave owners could have the country that they wanted and that they wouldn't have to risk the actual democracy, people voting for what they actually wanted. And that's why you have one or two or three states as all that matters in this upcoming election. All right, that should be, honestly, anytime. And you know, they quote people in here, Wisconsinites, saying, oh, it's exciting. And yes, I get it's exciting because your state's the center of it, but it's a catastrophe. It is incredibly antiquated fucking system that was designed by people who never heard of electricity. Why would you trust them on anything else nowadays? Honestly, would you even make your butter the same way? You're going to get out a butter churn and be like, well, there was the people who wrote the Constitution. All right. Let's get to the next one. Again, with the electoral politics, Democrats flip both Virginia chambers, and I get why that's exciting, get the Republicans fucking out there, but really what the headline should be is, hey, we switched from one of the parties that is fucking just a giveaway to Wall Street, endless war, endless exploitation of the poor, prison industrial complex, to the other party that's just an endless giveaway to Wall Street, endless war, endless prisons, and exploitation of the poor. But it was a switch. It was a change from one to the other. That's exciting, right? Right? These two parties agree on 90% of the core issues of this country. So I get that you're excited. The Democrats flip Virginia. That's my home state. But let's decrease the excitement. You know, take it from like a 99 down to like a 6%. 6% excitement, because that's the difference between the two parties, about 6%. All right, let's move on to this is a big article. More than 11,000 scientists around the globe declare a climate emergency. This is a big report that has come out, 11,258 scientists from 153 countries. And, you know, it's a fine article for the most part in the Washington Post. All right, I'm glad they're covering it. I'm glad they finally discovered climate change. But what this article doesn't mention is tomorrow, we, the Washington Post, are going to go back to fucking doing article after article that basically supports big oil, supports the system we currently have that is a big oil, natural gas, fracking heavy system, a system that is destroying the planet. We're going to go back to supporting that all tomorrow, maybe even later in this individual newspaper. But for this moment, for this article, we're going to talk about how this is a fucking crisis. So we'll tell you about that for a moment. You know, and we'll ignore the fact that we're owned by Amazon, which I don't know, is there a company that has more fucking trucks running around the country than Amazon, just spewing shit into the air, using up gasoline? Is there any? I think Amazon might be, you know, number one or two in that front. Those trucks are flying around, killing everybody now because we need one-day delivery. Like I've said, I got an idea that would save a lot of lives. 2-day delivery, all right? That's my new business model. But the Amazon, Jeff Bezos owns this newspaper. He is one of the more trucks running around the country than anybody. And yet, We're in a climate crisis, as they will tell you. One other point I want to make here is this study, and this is why this climate study is actually very important, another one of the reasons. The study also departs from other major climate assessments in that it directly addresses the politically sensitive subject of population growth. Nobody's allowed to mention population growth as we kill the planet. The study notes that, you know, it notes we're fucked, to sum it up there. And it says such measures as caring about stabilizing the population should strengthen human rights, especially for women and girls, and make family planning services available to all, is what this study says. And absolutely, we should be talking about population. Why is that? We're not saying, you know, there needs to be some law, hey, you have a second kid, we're going to kill it. We throw it in the river. But how about we have a discussion? Stop pumping out 7, 9, 14 kids. It's catastrophic to all the rest of us. Stop doing it, all right? Just stop doing it. Just don't be so dumb. I mean, there's other things that aren't illegal that we've just agreed should be the way we function. You know, it's not illegal to pick up your dog shit and throw it on your neighbor's car. I don't know, maybe it is, but it's not very illegal. And yet we just agree, hey, we're not going to do that, all right? We're not going to throw the dog shit at each other. It's just an agreement we have. So why don't we have an agreement? Hey, don't pump out more than a couple of kids. It's selfish. It's greedy. It's destructive. Killing the planet. So these things are, plus kids are annoying. I've said that many times. I'm out on the forefront of the kids are annoying. And condoms are your friend, all right? Condoms are your friend. Try them out. They're getting very good at them. They've made some new ones. They've got little extras they give away when you buy some, and try them out. All right, let's move on though. Next up, Redacted correspondent Natalie McGill delves into how our government's refusal to permanently fund health care for our poorest kids accidentally made it possible for the Trump administration to cripple a decades-old program meant to help sick children. Here now is Natalie McGill.
It's been obvious for years that we live in a very divided nation. I mean, even this past Halloween, we found that there are people who are well-adjusted, normal Americans, and people who think black licorice tastes delicious. But I was pretty sure the one thing everyone could agree on is that our nation's children, especially our poorest, should always have health care, which is why we have the Children's Health Insurance Program. Signed into law in 1997, the Children's Health Insurance Program, better known as CHIP, was a bipartisan effort of retired Republican Senator Orrin Hatch and late Democratic Senator Ted Kennedy. It was a safety net for kids whose families made too much money to qualify for Medicaid but couldn't afford private health insurance. But thanks to lawmakers who've made it their mission to gut social safety net programs that help the less fortunate, that net has a few gaping holes. Holes so huge that today, more than 1 million children across the country are no longer covered by Medicaid and CHIP. It is the first enrollment decline in a decade. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is directing state CHIP programs to constantly reevaluate family incomes to determine if they're still eligible for health care. For families, this means dealing with mounds of extra paperwork as complicated as the feelings of Washington Nationals fans who watched Ryan Zimmerman give Trump his own jersey. In many cases, families who miss out on key pieces of mail about how to stay enrolled because of a change in address or employment are at risk of being dropped from coverage. Like in Colorado, where state officials decided families could be dropped if as much as one piece of mail is returned by the U.S. Postal Service, which has made family mail retrieval an all-hands-on-deck effort. As a result of this mail scam, from May 2017 to May 2019, enrollment in Medicaid and CHIP dropped 8.5% in the state, more than 3 times the national decline of 2.5%, according to a congressional advisory panel. A single piece of returned mail? Do you think Sally Mae gives up after a single piece of returned mail when you owe them money? To them, you're Luke Skywalker, and they're a fleet of stormtroopers ready to hunt you to the ends of the universe for your new address. Another reason for the drop in chip enrollment is a White House proposal to deny green cards to immigrants who use public safety net programs. This makes families scared to seek out CHIP or any benefit that can help lift people out of poverty. But the most concerning part of all is the fact that CHIP was never a permanently funded program. It still relied on Congress to reauthorize it, which meant every few years, lawmakers would ask themselves the question, do we still like poor kids enough to give them health care? And up until 2017, that answer was usually yes, as long as it wasn't this kid.
Open it up, Fabricio.
No!
2017 saw CHIP on shaky ground after Congress didn't reauthorize the program funding for 4 months. While millions of kids' health care was in limbo, Republicans refused any deal to extend the program that didn't include cuts to the Affordable Care Act and Medicare. Because I guess they thought, hey, why should divorced parents be the only ones who get to use kids as a bargaining chip? Was CHIP finally reauthorized? Yeah. But will even more children continue to get kicked off the rolls? Absolutely. And after more than 20 years of assurances that these kids would be covered, Americans finally realized that instead of funding CHIP permanently, politicians would rather play partisan politics before their kid gets an inhaler for an asthma attack. All while people like Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Seema Verna tweeted that fewer people are on public assistance because under President Trump's leadership, the American economy is thriving. If there are fewer people relying on public assistance, it's because this administration went out of its way to create roadblocks of bureaucracy, bullshit work requirements, and fear-mongering. And no one, especially a kid, deserves that. I mean, unless it's this one.
I love you!
I hate you!
Reporting from a disturbingly cheerful pediatrician's office, this is Natalie McGill for Redacted Tonight.
We have to go to a quick break, but we are constantly being suppressed online. You can catch every episode at youtube.com/redacted tonight. If you don't find out about it, you can also get it all at pluto.tv channel 279. Please help spread the word because we are heavily suppressed. Okay, I'll be right back with a lot more. Welcome back. I'm still Lee Camp. Here now is my interview with the co-founder and lead organizer of Public Bank Los Angeles, which is helping to create a nationwide movement, Trinity Tran. Trinity, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lee.
So you're the co-founder and lead organizer of Public Bank LA. Public banking is the idea that the city's money should go into a bank owned by the people, the public, rather than a corporate big bank, and thereby that money can help the people in the city in a lot of different ways, as well as take back some of the control that big banks have over us. Last time I had on someone from your organization, there was about to be a vote on a ballot initiative, which you guys then barely lost. But now Governor Newsom has signed a bill to allow public banking anyway. Is that right?
Yes, we led the Measure B ballot measure campaign in Los Angeles last year. And we had 4 months to organize on a grassroots budget, minimal funding with no infrastructure, trying to change a section in the Los Angeles City Charter to pave the path for an LA City bank. And we came close. We got 44% of the vote with 430,000 people voicing their support for a public bank. And we immediately took that momentum and pivoted towards a statewide effort. And just last month, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill, and now California is the first state in a century to enable cities and counties in California to create their own public bank. So we lost the battle, we won the war, and it's been an incredibly exciting fight because this bill, AB 857, the Public Banking Act, was a grassroots initiated bill, drafted, conceived of from the grassroots, that challenged the most powerful corporate lobbyists in the world and succeeded.
Yeah, congratulations to all of you. I mean, you were and you really still are up against some incredibly powerful, well-funded entities. The big banks that rule our country do not want to see public banking take off across the country. How did you win this fight? How did you make this happen?
Well, it was an incredibly complex, complicated labyrinth of a process to move through the California state legislature. And it was a first for many of us, which made this win even more incredible, considering the might of our opposition, considering that we had no rules, no playbook, no funding, no lobbyists as we were going into this fight. So we had to maneuver through the political arena in both the California State Senate and Assembly. We had to move through 6 legislative committees examining the fiscal impact, the local government impact, the oversight of public banks in California. We had to write amendments. We had to negotiate amendments with the chair of the committees and their banking staffers, ensuring that the strongest version of the bill passed through each of the committees. We had to mobilize popular support from across the state of California. We had to create public citizens lobbying team to be able to combat Wall Street lobbyists who are trying to kill this bill every step of the way. So this was ultimately an epic street fight between Main Street and Wall Street, and we won by being able to outmaneuver and out-organize the opposition. And you know what?
I was going to say, I'm very happy there's people like you to do the nitty gritty work of, like, you know, crafting amendments and pushing amendments. And because I just like to get on TV and just scream about things and hope that someone will do something. So it seems like you guys really did something, starting with just moving the discussion, right? Getting people to understand what public banking is. I mean, it was that tough, getting people to just not be bored by the term public banking?
Yeah, absolutely. We had to move this conversation from an ideology that was somewhat obscure to an idea that was needed and drill in the urgency behind it. And that required us to really hone in and focus on 3 levels of organizing. And one was reaching out and engaging with the Democratic Party to help make this idea politically safe, to move it further into the political mainstream and help legitimize public banking as something that wasn't seen as far left radical, but something that was inevitable, an inevitable evolution of this financial system, you know, catering to the democratic ideals of being able to provide affordable credit to communities, empowering communities, being able to invest in communities. Another way we were able to succeed was building a broad-based coalition to combat the Wall Street private interest. There were about 9 lobby groups that were lobbying to kill this bill through the committees, representing private finance and government and big government. So we had to create a diverse group of people power representing elected officials, cities. There were 17 cities and counties that came on to actually sign resolutions endorsing AB 857, the Public Banking Act, which would enable cities and counties in California to create public banks. We had the support of over 180 community organizations, national organizations, some of the biggest labor unions in the state of California, which further helped legitimize the idea and bring that political power that we need. And then thirdly, we had to coordinate an incredible inside-outside strategy, working together with legislators moving from the inside and grassroots activists coordinating pressure from the outside. And those 3 things together really helped us essentially hack the system and take on the Wall Street lobby without any funding.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is called organizing, but a lot of people
Yes.
it seems to be a craft that has been lost over time for a lot of organizations. You know, what kind of efforts and tricks were the big banks involved in trying to stop you, and Wall Street trying to stop you? And do you have any idea as to what else they have coming down the road?
Well, they testified against us through committees. They lobbied behind the scenes in Sacramento. And as they were walking through the halls, we had to bring a lobbying force up in Sacramento. And we coordinated an incredibly high caliber team of organizers. These weren't just your typical activists. These were lawyers, retired doctors, executives, young professionals, students who are all united and educated on the talking points to be able to communicate to legislators about the importance of this bill. And essentially how we were able to beat Wall Street was by recalibrating what it means to be an activist. It's not something that is necessarily has to be confrontational. It's about being able to respectfully sit down and build a relationship and build camaraderie with legislators to be able to inspire them to move this bill forward. And that was what we were successful in. They testified against us in committee. They pulled senators and assembly members off of the floor to try to get them to flip their vote. They released op-eds that were packed full of misinformation, which then we had to lobby to counter that in Sacramento and also in district. And, a key part of our win was being able to establish a statewide formidable front line of organizers representing 10 cities in California, from Los Angeles to San Francisco, from Oakland to Santa Rosa to San Diego, activists, public lobbyists who were able to combat their misinformation directly with legislators all the way through.
And what are your next steps now that starting a public bank is actually legal?
Well, now that it's legal, the fight pivots back to the city level. AB 857 is going to be implemented as a pilot program, which means the Department of Business Oversight is enabling 2 public bank licenses to be issued to 2 cities a year over the 7-year period with a maximum of 10 public banking licenses. So over the next 7 years, the California Public Banking Alliance will coordinate the rollout of these public banks. We are going to have to go through a much more technical process involving legal and financial experts to take us through the creating a business plan or a viability study, which then has to be approved by the local governing body. That viability study then has to be approved by the DBO. Then it has to be approved by the FDIC for insurance, and then the Federal Reserve. So there are various levels of fail safes before a public bank can happen, and it's going to be, a multiple year process. But this is a huge step. California, the 5th largest economy in the world, took a bold step against the Wall Street status quo to say enough. And so that we feel that we are at the peak of a potential financial revolution that is reshaping finance, re-envisioning what money means, how redirecting the flow of money into our economies. And, it's an incredibly revolutionary moment. And we hope that our success in California is going to inspire activists and advocates across the country to take this fight at the city level, at the state level, and really challenge Wall Street and create a network of public banks across the state of not only California, but across the country.
You did a great job there of putting it in the broad terms of revolutionizing finance, revolutionizing money. I know that I've discussed this on past shows, but I'm sure there's plenty of people watching who, are not as educated on public banking. Considering how tough it is to get done, what are the specific reasons that it is so beneficial to a community?
So a public bank, in short, is a financial institution that's owned by a public entity. With AB 857, we're enabling cities, counties, and regions in California to take the first steps toward creating a public bank. The deposits for a public bank are the tax revenues and the fees that our cities accrue, which the bank then leverages to create loans just like any other bank. But unlike private banks, public banks are mandated to serve the people, which means the interest and the profit that a public bank accrues is owned collectively by the community. Right now in California, and aside from the state of North Dakota, which has the only existing public bank in the United States, we don't have a public public banking option, which means that our cities spend billions in debt services, borrowing money from out-of-state Wall Street banks, who then leverage our public funds to finance harmful industries that our communities actively fight against, like fossil fuels and private prisons and immigrant detention centers. So we are creating another option that enables us to recapture the interest that we pay to bondholders, to be able to recirculate that money back and reinvest in things that we actually need. So this is a way to mobilize public revenues to serve public interest. It really is an inevitable evolution of this financial system that has obviously served only a very small handful of people, and it's a common sense step towards our financial independence.
Yeah, nothing like funding all of the stuff we hate across the country. In this last minute, how do you foresee building this national movement? How can people get involved if they're watching right now and they think it sounds like something they'd like to work on in their community?
Great. We hope that this sets a firestorm across the country. In about a week, we are holding our first national public banking call. It's a private invite call for public banking organizers who are already active. If you are already building your army, if you're already building your coalition, have already engaged with legislators, reach out to us at calpba@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter or on Facebook and let us know your progress. We'd love to be able to give other organizers an inside access and more in-depth look at the tools and tactics that it took to win this fight without any funding, and considering the opposition that we had. We believe that we have essentially found a way to hack the system, and we hope that we can use our experience and what we've learned to not only take on the banking industry, but every other extractive, predatory industry on this planet, and take that power back and put it in the hands of the people.
Trinity Tran, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee.
That is the show, but you can get my stand-up comedy special at leecampcomedyspecial.com. Go check it out for free. Also, you can get the 2 free weekly podcasts, Common Censored and Moment of Clarity. They're both on iTunes, Spotify, or Stitcher. Until next time, good night. Keep fighting.